Chapter 3, Unlikely Alliances. Elowyn sat in her chambers, staring at the flickering candlelight on her desk. Elric wasn't lying. She could feel it in her bones, but feeling it wasn't enough. She needed proof. Her fingers traced the edge of the parchment before her, a list of Elric's known correspondences, hastily copied from the court records before she left the dungeons. Most of them were mages within the arcane order, but a few names stood out. Ambassadors, scholars, even a knight. If she could uncover what he was truly doing, she might be able to prove his innocence before the king made his judgment. A knock on her door startled her. Selene entered first, but behind her, to Elowyn's shock, stood Alistair. She sat up straighter, her fingers instinctively tightening around the parchment. "What are you doing here?" Alistair sighed and shut the door behind him. "I'm here to help." Elowyn blinked. She studied him, searching for deceit, but he seemed genuine. "You're the one who called him a traitor in the dungeon," she pointed out. "I said the king will decide his fate." Alistair crossed his arms. Not that he was guilty. That surprised her. Selene, standing by her side, narrowed her eyes. "Why do you care?" Alistair exhaled. "Because something is wrong, Elowyn, and even if we don't see eye to eye on everything, I'd rather have answers than be used as someone's pawn." Elowyn's mind raced. Was this a trick, or was he truly offering his aid? She glanced at Selene, who gave a reluctant nod. It was a risk, but if Alistair was telling the truth, he could help in ways she could. "Fine!" She handed him the parchment. "I need to know who else Elric was in contact with before his arrest." Alistair took the paper and scanned it, his brows furrowed. "Sir Edwin Ryan?" Elowyn leaned forward. "You know him?" "He's one of the knight commanders of the Argent Guard, one of the few I trust." Alistair looked up. If Elric was working with him, then he might have been trying to protect the kingdom, not betray it. Elowyn's heart pounded. This was the lead she needed. "Can you arrange a meeting with him?" she asked. Alistair smirked. "I can do better than that." The hidden truth. Sir Edwin Ryan was a hardened knight in his late 40s, with greying hair and a scar along his jaw. He met them under the cover of night in a secluded training courtyard within the palace. When he saw Alistair, his brow furrowed. "You realise this is dangerous?" "I wouldn't have come if it weren't important," Alistair replied. He glanced at Elowyn. "Tell him." Elowyn took a breath. "Master Elric claims he was warning our allies, not betraying us. He was trying to stop something, or someone. If you were in contact with him, then you might know what he was trying to prevent." Sir Edwin hesitated, then sighed. "You two have no idea how deep this goes." Elowyn felt a chill. "Then tell us." The knight glanced around before speaking. "A few months ago, Elric came to me with concerns about unusual movements in the palace, orders being given that did not come from the king. He feared someone was pulling strings in the shadows." Alistair's expression darkened. "Who?" Sir Edwin shook his head. He didn't know, but he believed that the mastermind was slowly isolating the princess, ensuring that when the time came, she would have no one left to trust. Elowyn's blood ran cold. It was exactly what she had felt. "Then why was he arrested?" she asked. "Because he was close to uncovering the truth." Sir Edwin's voice was grim. "He told me he had found something, evidence, but before he could share it, he was taken." Elowyn exchanged a look with Alistair. If they could find that evidence, they could clear Elric's name. Sir Edwin hesitated before adding, "There is one place he always hid important things. The arcane archives." Elowyn straightened. "Then that's where we go." Alistair grinned, rolling his shoulders. "Breaking into a restricted archive? This should be fun." Chapter 3, The Hidden Truth, Part 2. The arcane archives lay deep beneath the palace, protected by layers of enchantments and guarded by the most trusted mages of the order. Normally, even a princess would need formal approval to enter. Tonight, however, Elowyn wasn't waiting for permission. Alistair and Selene flanked her as they navigated the twisting corridors, torches flickering against the ancient stone walls. Sir Edwin had given them a name, Elric's secret repository, but finding it would be another matter entirely. "Are you sure about this?" Selene whispered, eyes darting around. "If we're caught, we won't be." Alistair flashed a smirk. "I've snuck into worse places." Elowyn sighed. She doubted that, but there was no turning back now. Inside the archives! The moment they stepped through the doors, the air changed. Magic hummed through the walls, woven into every book and artifact. Shelves lined with ancient tomes towered above them, stretching into the darkness. Elowyn inhaled sharply. She had only been here once before, on the day she was named heir to the Arcane Order. The High Mages had sworn fealty to her, acknowledging her bloodline's connection to magic. But tonight, she wasn't here as their leader. Tonight, she was a thief. Alistair scanned the shelves. Where do we even start? Celine stepped forward, pulling out a worn leather book. We look for his records. If Elric hid something, he would have left a trace in his research. Elowyn nodded, running her fingers along the spines of books. Elric was meticulous. He wouldn't have left his work unguarded. She searched for any sign of a misplaced book, a hidden compartment, anything. Then she saw it. A false panel in the shelf, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. She pressed her fingers against it, murmuring a small spell. The wood shimmered, then... click! A small drawer slid open, revealing a collection of parchment and a single sealed letter. This was it. Elowyn reached for it. And what exactly do you think you're doing? A voice cut through the silence. They spun around. A woman stood behind them, arms crossed. She was an elf, her long silver hair braided elegantly over one shoulder. Unlike most of the archivists, she wore no formal robes. Instead, she was wrapped in a thick, oversized cloak, as if she had been curled up reading somewhere. Her emerald eyes narrowed as she examined them. Alistair tensed, his hand drifting toward his sword. Elowyn stepped forward quickly. Wait! The elf's gaze flickered toward her, then widened. Oh, something changed. Her suspicious expression melted into one of delight. You're adorable, Elowyn blinked. Celine and Alistair froze. Excuse me? The princess asked, utterly bewildered. The elf clasped her hands together, eyes practically sparkling. I've never seen you up close before, she gushed. The princess of the Arcane Order, so small, so serious. Celine gave Elowyn a look. The princess cleared her throat. That doesn't explain why you're here. The elf tilted her head. You're the one sneaking into restricted archives. Alistair muttered. She's got a point. Elowyn straightened. This was it. If the elf raised the alarm, they were done for. She took a breath and lifted her chin. I am the rightful leader of this order. Her voice was calm, authoritative. That means I have authority here. If I say you saw nothing tonight, you will obey. The elf blinked. Then, to their complete shock, she beamed. Oh, you're so bold, she cooed. So serious and commanding. Alistair stared at her. What is happening? Celine sighed, rubbing her temple. I think she likes cute things. The elf nodded enthusiastically. Elowyn tried to regain control of the situation. Who are you? The elf bowed dramatically. Archivist Lyra Valeris, at your service. And since you are my beloved order's leader, I suppose that means I should listen to you. Elowyn hesitated. Does that mean you won't report us? Lyra grinned. Not if you let me help, Celine muttered. You can't be serious. But Elowyn saw an opportunity. If Lyra truly was an archivist, then she might know more about Elric's hidden records. She turned to the elf. We need to prove Elric's innocence. If you can help us find the truth, we might save him. Lyra tilted her head, considering. Then, with a bright smile, she snatched the sealed letter from Elowyn's hand. Then let's get started. Chapter 3. The Hidden Truth, Part 3. The night dragged on as the group delved deeper into the labyrinthine shelves of the arcane archives. The air was thick with the scent of ancient parchment ink dust, and the only sound was the rustling of paper and the occasional soft click of a lock being undone. Lyra had taken the lead, her movements quick and nimble, as if the weight of centuries-old books didn't faze her. She hummed softly as she scoured the shelves, her fingers tracing delicate patterns on the spines of the tomes. Elowyn, Celine, and Alistair followed closely behind, their eyes scanning the rows of ancient books for any hint, any clue that might help them uncover what Elric had left hidden. This place is, Celine muttered, rubbing her eyes, so much bigger than I imagined. Lyra shot her a grin, her voice playful. It's one of the oldest libraries in the kingdom, and you, dear princess, haven't seen its full extent yet. There are layers beneath this place, hidden chambers no one dares to enter. Elowin's curiosity piqued. What do you mean by that? Secrets, Lyra said with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Old magic, forbidden knowledge, things better left undisturbed. She sighed dramatically. If only I had more time to explore them. Celine raised an eyebrow. Sounds dangerous. Lyra winked at her. That's what makes it fun. Alistair, who had been inspecting an old chest in the corner, interrupted their banter. You're all distracting me. His voice held a hint of frustration. Elric's records, are we going to find them or not? Elowin's gaze narrowed, her hands clasped together as she leaned over one of the tables, sorting through papers. We need to focus. Lyra caught Elowin's expression and nodded. Right, let's see what we can find about Elric's recent work. If there's a hidden message, it'll be somewhere in his research. Elowin felt a pang of guilt. Elric had been so careful with his work, and now it all felt like a puzzle they could barely piece together, but she couldn't back down. She had to do this. For him. The code! Hours passed, the candles growing low as their search continued. They came across several of Elric's usual tomes on magical theory, treaties and political correspondence, but nothing seemed to hold the key they needed. Where is it? Elowin muttered under her breath. Lyra hummed thoughtfully, flipping through a stack of papers, then halting. Wait! She squinted at the page she was holding. What is it? Alistair asked, his voice tinged with impatience. Lyra tapped the page. It's not much, just some scribbles in the margins. Elowin leaned in, staring at the cryptic symbols that seemed to swirl on the page like a riddle. It looks like a cipher, she said slowly. I've seen something like this before, Lyra added, but only in ancient texts. It's a form of enchantment, a coded language that masks the true meaning of words. Elowin frowned. Can we decode it? Lyra looked at her with a grin. Of course we can, but it's going to take time and patience and a very sharp mind. Luckily, I have all three. Alistair groaned. That sounds like it's going to take forever. Lyra ignored him, already pulling out a collection of parchment, quills and ink. You don't understand. This is beautiful magic! Elric was brilliant to use it. The elf's fingers moved quickly, sketching out symbols and arranging them into a pattern. For the next several minutes, she muttered to herself, scratching out notes and making connections, while Elowin and her companions watched in silence. I need a second pair of eyes, Lyra said after a while, tapping the page with her quill. Elowin hesitated, but then leaned over, squinting at the markings. What do you need me to do? Lyra handed her the quill. I need you to look at these shapes and tell me what you see. There's something in the structure of the symbols that's too complex for me to decipher alone. Can you see the pattern? Elowin stared at the symbols. They were like nothing she had seen before. Fragments of runes, fragmented lines and curves that almost seemed to move. Then it clicked. I think I see it, Elowin said softly, pointing to one of the symbols. It's a series of sending steps, almost like a ladder. The symbols represent a sequence, not just letters. Each step leads to the next. Lyra's eyes widened. That's it. Of course, I was looking at it the wrong way. With renewed focus, Lyra began to rearrange the symbols, connecting them like pieces of a puzzle. Elowin followed her lead, and together they started to unravel the code. A revelation! By the time the first rays of dawn began to creep through the tall windows of the archives, they had cracked the cipher. The page before them now contained a message, a final warning from Elric. Beware the shadow that watches the crown. There is a hand behind the king's court, hidden in plain sight. They will isolate you, princess. They will twist your trust and lead you to ruin. You must find the heart of the conspiracy before they find you. Elowin's heart raced. This was it. Elric had known something dark was at work, and he had left her this message as a final act of defiance. I knew it, she whispered. It wasn't just about me, it's about something bigger. Alistair stepped forward, reading the message over her shoulder. So, what now? Elowin clenched her fists. We expose this shadow. But Lyra's voice interrupted her thoughts. Wait, Elowin turned to her. What is it? Lyra smiled faintly. This is my favourite part. She waved her hand over the page, and the symbols shimmered faintly in the dim light. Elric wasn't just warning you. He also left clues to the next step, hidden within the shadow itself. Elowin blinked. You mean... Lyra nodded. We have a starting point, but first we need to find the heart of the conspiracy, and I think I know where to look. The dawn had broken, but the fight was only just beginning. With their new ally in tow, Elowen felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together they would uncover the truth, and no one, not even the shadows, would stop them.